Live from the sun-drenched cobblestones of the Eternal City, conversations crossing faith, culture, and current events. Civil discourse, civil debate, and the free exchange of ideas. This is Intersections with Bree Dail and Joey Meugniot. And now your hosts, Bree and Joey.
Good morning from a very rainy, stormy Rome. This is Bree Dail, and I am joined today by my co-host, Joey Meugniot, and a very special guest, which we'll discuss in a second. But for those of you who are joining for the first time, I am an internationally accredited journalist, including accreditation to the Holy See as the Rome correspondent for the Epoch Times. You may also find me on National Catholic Register and other outlets. I hold a BA in History from Christendom College and a Master's in Foreign Policy and Diplomacy from the prestigious Norwich University. And good morning, Joey.
Good morning, Bree. It's definitely a cloudy, rainy, wet, awful, not so great day. But with that being said, I hope everyone is having a great start to their week. And whether you're listening on the radio or watching online, thanks for joining us. My name's Joey Meugniot. I'm a political advisor, small business consultant, and analyst. And I'm excited this morning to share our thoughts and analysis on a few topics and things that have happened over the last week and things that are coming up. And we'll get you caught up on a lot of those. With that being said, I'll hand you back up to Bree so she can kick us off. Bree, so what are we going to be talking about today?
So our show is broken down into three different themes: news impacting faith, connecting those to news impacting culture, and then finally news focused on current events and politics. But today is going to be a little bit different because the majority of our show is going to be talking about politics. And why? Because we have a special guest here in Rome, Joey Mannarino. And Joey's a former radio host and a strategic communications expert. And he is a co-founder of one of America's top political consulting agencies. And he is here in Rome right now on a visit, and we were able to grab him. So welcome, Joey, to Intersections.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here with you and Joey. I'm so glad. I don't know how great this connection will be because, like you said, we are having stormy weather in Rome, and I'm right on a terrace overlooking St. Peter's. And every couple of seconds, I see a lightning bolt and a cloud, and I don't know what we're going to have, but we're going to have a great discussion. So I'm looking forward to it.
And we're really thankful for you to come on here because, you know, when we talk about politics, it's so connected and so interweaved into, you know, religion and culture that it's sometimes hard to see where it begins and ends, right? And one of those things is that I really love to discuss about what's going on in the Vatican is talking with Joey Mannarino, you and Joey Meugniot, and we're going to be doing that, Joey Mannarino and Joey Meugniot, so that you know who we're talking to. For those of you who are on the radio, what I love is coming from a perspective outside of the Vatican bubble and outside the Catholic bubbles. You know, because we have a lot of confirmation bias, a lot of individuals who see the church in one way and maybe not see the political ends in the way that really is helpful because it's so imbued with emotion when we have to deal with something like ideology, something, our faith, right? And it's really important to understand that, faith is built on nature, grace is built on nature, and we have a lot of politicking happening in the Vatican, and I think a lot of people see that. But that's something that I enjoy, is to take a look at it in a different way, kind of like when we look at DC, and that's where your expertise, Joey Mannarino, is. And so today, before we begin talking about the main bulk of our show, where we're going to be talking about politics, I want to discuss some news out of the Vatican because it's really kind of interconnected, like I said. So there are some concerning reports coming out of a financial watchdog group focused on immigration, where American government monies is being sent to the USCCB, allegedly through Catholic charities, taking immigrants or illegal immigrants from the border and bringing them into the interior of the United States. And this is it's a concern. It's a concern. Now, this is coming out of a group called Refugee Settlement Watch .org, and this is not like something that is new. This seems to be a continuation of an Obama policy that was enacted during the Obama administration, which provided monies, and this is documented, provided monies to the USCCB to promote refugee resettlement. So, the United States Council of Catholic Bishops and the Catholic Church in the United States is considered a 501c3 and nonprofit. With this information, and again, this needs to be corroborated and it needs to be reported on. So we're starting that. But with this information that I provided you, Joey, and I'll throw it to Joey Meugniot first, and then to Joey Mannarino. What are your first thoughts on that?
I wish I say this every week, but I wish I was surprised, and I'm still not all that surprised. It makes a lot of sense when you look through the lens of money and power. And through that lens, you get an idea of some of the policies and some of the public stances that they're taking based on money. You're more likely to support somebody if they're giving you a lot of money. And it looks like to the tunes of 12, 15, $20 million are being used for refugee resettlement or unaccompanied, I forget what the term is, but it's basically unaccompanied minors are being resettled as well. So if you're getting that much money, then you're more likely to support the people that are going to be lining your pockets, to say the least.
Joey Mannarino, your thoughts?
Well, we have a huge problem at the United States border, and quite frankly, that should be for the United States government to handle. The fact that these people are inserting themselves into it, I think, is just out of this world crazy. They need to mind their business. We need to fix our problem at the border. And these two issues should not be connected. And the fact that they are is a very bad precedent. We don't need outside NGOs or 501c3s or anybody dealing with our border policy in the United States. Let's leave that to America to decide. And everybody else can deal with their own borders and just deal with the issues that are relevant to them.
And for those of you who are hearing, Joey has a little dog, so you're going to hear him like cry sometimes. I think when he's talking, he wants attention. But to go back to
he's
this,
crying because it's such a shame what they're doing. That's why.
Right, that's right. One of those things that is really concerning is the money aspect, and we know that the Holy Father Pope Francis has come out and said in recent administrations, the Trump border policy in particular, that countries should not be building walls but building bridges, and it does seem that there's a political element to this, an ideological political element. And of course, we do want to take care of the weakest and the most vulnerable. And that's what Catholic Charities is expecting to do. But Joey Meugniot, like the money issue is I think something that needs to be discovered, especially because there was talk that the money that had been set aside, the trillions of dollars set aside for COVID relief, potentially was going to go towards refugee support and resettlement. And it seems like there might be a connection there. Joey Meugniot?
Well, of course, there's likely a connection. You're just looking at another example of, government redistributing money to their friends and people that that agree with them. They're just taking tax dollars and spending it on, I guess what we would call them policies that support your ideology and the way you want to remake the United States and the larger global community and the image that you have in your own mind. And the Vatican and the USCCB are supporting that. They're almost walking arm in arm with them. I mean, over the past 4 years, we had a president that was probably arguably the most pro-Catholic president or pro-Christian president that we've had in an extremely long time. And now you have one that's a Catholic in name only, and none of it really adds up to me. And it reeks of cronyism and kickbacks, and it doesn't look right. It doesn't sound right. They shouldn't be involved in the first place, like Joey said. It's not a place for them. Government does very few things right, but this is one of the areas that is clearly under the purview of the federal government, and they should be handling this issue, not outsourcing it to contractors or to NGOs to handle the border crisis.
Or refugee resettlement, yes. And, we were talking about this earlier, and this is the other story really coming out of the Vatican, and it has been hit by quite a few media organizations. And I think that actually has done the PR for them. But lots of conferences happening in the Vatican. Joey, you and I have discussed a conference just recently that was headed by Cardinal Turkson and Cardinal Parolin, the Secretary of State, out of the Vatican. But the focus point of that one was integral disarmament, if you remember. Countries disarming in the name of peace and harmony and whatnot. Now what we're seeing is that there's a new conference with some big A-lister names, including Anthony Fauci, a guy who's part of Aerosmith, Hillary Clinton, or not Hillary Clinton, but Chelsea Clinton, and others. And it has to deal with health and culture. And there's been a big, push. A lot of people are very upset about this. It seems to be continuing. Joey Manarino, when you heard about this, and I know that Joey Meugniot has a lot to say about this, but when you heard about this, what were your first thoughts?
I don't know what they're doing, going to the church and talking to the church about these things. I mean, I don't want to hear any of those people talk under any circumstances, just from a personal point of view. But I just don't understand what somebody from Aerosmith is going to talk about health. I don't know why Fauci needs to come to the church and discuss health. This is just something that we don't need. We don't need to hear from these people. They don't need to be coming and making a big stir and a big deal about their issues. They have their things to deal with, and it's just, I don't know, keep these things separate. It's just like we were talking about in the other thing. Why are all these organizations coming together, and why are we trying to influence, especially from a church's perspective? Why do we care what Anthony Fauci has to say? We're supposed to be dealing with holiness and thunder, but we're not supposed to be dealing with these things, as far as I'm concerned, especially from people like Fauci and Clinton, when these are not exactly holy people, let's say the least.
Right, and but Joey Meugniot, are we supposed to be dialoguing with the other side?
Yes, we can be. It doesn't, I wouldn't consider them on our side or anyone else's side. Really, they're kind of on their own side. That's the group. This is a star-studded group of speakers. That it's partisan politicians, professional athletes, musicians, millionaires, billionaires, and they're going to be slated to talk about uniting to prevent, the spread of diseases. And I thought that was interesting. Their stated goals were to campaign and promote preventative measures and to contribute to reducing social disparity in healthcare. Okay. And then to forge new public and private academic partnerships to deal with major health issues and support sustainable and healthy communities globally. I don't think that we have a huge problem doing that now, but okay. But and then you look at you look at the group of people that are involved in it, and it's a bunch of big businesses, tech people, and wealthy elites that are trying to figure out how to tell us what to do. And I think more importantly is that if maybe Dr. Fauci can give us some more contradictory medical advice based on his politics and fear mongering, or perhaps even Chelsea Clinton can give us an update, on the Clinton Foundation's work with Catholics living in Haiti. And I'd venture to say that we're going to get a lot of the former, which would be, telling us how they think we should be living, and they're doing it with the backing of the Vatican.
Right. So when we come back, we're getting down to the end of the first section here. But when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of these political machinations that are coming out of Washington, D.C. and why it's really important to kind of keep an eye on that. Because, again, Joey, you and I have had this conversation a lot of times when it comes to media. And fear mongering and manipulation of narratives, whether it's one way or the other, we have to really discern, like, what is the end state? What is the end point of this? And I think one of the end points of the announcement of this conference, especially with the individuals who are coming to the conference, again, are they experts? Well, Fauci is. He's an expert. But this is a papacy that has promoted dialogue. But Chelsea Clinton, pro-abortion, these are things that we need to question, and I think it's rightly so that people are. When we get back, we're going to have Joey and Joey back on. We're going to be discussing Maxine Waters and a viral video that came out, and some other very big stories coming out of Washington, D.C. Thank you for joining us today. This is Intersections, Crossing Faith, Culture, and Current Events. I'm Bree Dail, joined with my co-host, Joey Meugniot, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Often unbelievers have a hard time reconciling the doctrine of hell with an all-good God. In fact, I've talked to Catholics who struggle with this. So what can we say to help? Well, first, the punishment of hell is not a kind of vengeance inflicted by God from without, but follows from the nature of sin. All those in hell choose it, and God's respect of man's free will doesn't contradict his goodness. Furthermore, it belongs to God's goodness to make a distinction between loyal and disloyal subjects, and to give their just deserts. What kind of a God would he be if he gave the same reward, heaven, to those who refuse to love him as to those who love him? He wouldn't be a good God. For these reasons, the doctrine of hell is not incompatible with God's goodness. I'm Carlo Broussard with a ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Your Odyssey begins at the University of Dallas, the premier Catholic liberal arts university in Texas. With campuses in Irving and Italy, UD's rigorous core curriculum sets it apart. An education rooted in the great works of Catholic and Western tradition. An education that ennobles and enables students in the pursuit of wisdom, truth, and virtue. Undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs are available. Start your college odyssey at the University of Dallas today. Go to udallas.edu to learn more.
Dail. I'm joined today by Joey Meugniot and Joey Manarino, an expert in strategic communications and political consulting. So, right when we went to break, some breaking news out of the AP. Russia expels 10 U.S. diplomats, bars 8 U.S. officials from entering the country, including Merrick Garland, Christopher Wray, and Alejandro Mayorkas. Russian officials say they will take other retaliatory moves against the Biden administration. That's out of the AP. So, you know, when it comes to politics and the church, there's always intermingling. We know this because back during the Clinton administration, Clinton was the first, Bill Clinton was the first president to do a Pew poll research to see whether or not Catholics actually believed in what the church taught in regards to Humanae Vitae and the use of prophylactics and abortion. And I think that's really interesting because he understood that if Catholics in the United States didn't agree with what the church actually formally taught, that there was potentially a way to be able to engage those particular Catholics into other social issues. And we've discussed one of those, which is, again, migrant issues, human rights issues. And, you know, on both sides, whenever there is a crisis, we're going to see crisis manipulation. And Joey, one of the really interesting things that have happened over the weekend is a viral video that actually I put out, and Fox News reported it, and we had some representatives report on it as well. Representative Maxine Waters, who is a very well-known Democrat representing from California, was in Minnesota? And she was there promoting some of the protests, and I'm going to let Joey Meugniot kind of take this off and talk a little bit about this, and then I think our listeners would be really interested in hearing someone who's an expert on the DC machinations kind of given an expert opinion on this. So Joey Meugniot.
Yeah, she's done this before. This isn't the first time that this has happened. It's just probably the most visible one now because of what's happened over the last 3 or 4 months. But not only, and we can play the clip here in a little bit, but not only did she, advocate for more aggressive rioting, which is at this point, it's not a mostly peaceful anything. Within a few hours, there was a drive-by shooting with against one of the National Guard and police task force units that were deployed in Minneapolis to help keep the peace in the community. And according to the National Guard, 2 of their guardsmen were taken to the hospital for non-life-threatening injuries. But I mean, if this isn't a perfect example of inciting violence, which we've heard incessantly from the media for the last 4 months, I don't know what is. Like, this is a pretty textbook. She got on the camera, said you need to be more aggressive, more violent, get in their faces more. And then 2 soldiers got shot and had to be taken to the hospital. That's
yeah,
pretty...
Can we get that video up, Adrian? Because we're going to let people see it and also hear it. What Representative Maxine Waters said, and our producer is going to pull that up.
And not just manslaughter, right? I mean,
oh no, not manslaughter. No. This is guilty for murder. I don't know whether it's in the first degree, but as far as I'm concerned, it's first degree murder.
Congresswoman, what happens if we do not get what you just told? What should the people do? What should protesters on the street do?
I didn't hear you.
What happens?
What should protesters do?
Well, we got to stay on the street, and we've got to get more active. We've got to get more confrontational. We've got to make sure that they know that we mean business.
So, wow. So, Joey Manarino, we've got to get active. We've got to get more confrontational. January 6th, I don't know if anybody's excusing some of the actions that took place at the Capitol, but I don't recall hearing anybody on either side calling for more confrontation, more action. Your thoughts?
So if Matt Gaetz or Marjorie Greene or Lauren Boebert had said that same thing about the actions on January 6th, they'd probably be sitting in federal prison right now. Maxine Waters said this after a Molotov cocktail was already thrown at officers. She said this after Apple stores and churches and other monuments and statues had been burned down. So when you say get more aggressive, get more confrontational, what's more confrontational than that? What more confrontation would Maxine Waters like to see? This is a woman who said 2 years ago, we need to get in Trump's officials' faces and make sure that they can't go anywhere, anymore, anytime. She has been spewing violence from the 90s, from when she got elected till now. She hasn't done anything but spew violence. And essentially, I think she'll get away with it again. She gets away with it every single time. You get mad, people get mad, Republicans fundraise off of it 1 or 2 days, and then the next thing that happens is it just goes on. She gets reelected, and the cycle continues over and over again. Kevin McCarthy, he did say that he does want some retaliatory action, and he wants Nancy Pelosi to do something to Waters for what she did. He wants to censor or maybe take her off of a committee. But, let's be honest. The Republican Party do not control the House right now, and nothing's going to happen. This is going to just be another example in the Maxine Waters historical incitement to violence textbook that she's been writing for 30 years now.
Joey Meugniot.
There's not much to add to that. That's pretty succinct and pretty well put. We'll continue to do this, and there's not a lot that anyone's going to do about it. It's a news cycle now, and then she'll do it again in a month or two when the dust blows over.
Right. One of the things that I have been seeing out of there as well, and out of Portland, there seems to be a connection here. That it's not enough to have dialogue at this point because of police, and this is ongoing, by the way, for those of you who are listening. You're listening to Intersections, where faith, culture, and current events meet. I think one of the things that is very concerning that we're watching right now is this pattern of escalation coming from both the media promoting it, and there was a video that went viral as well of CNN's Chris Cuomo coming out and saying the only time that people are actually going to care about this is if white children start getting killed. And this, we have a lot of tension right now, and we, you and I, Joey, last week discussed this, where there's a lot of frustration and a lot of there's a need to take a look at like how police are being trained, and take a look at the grievances that are being brought forth by individuals. But the tensions are so high and the rhetoric doesn't help. So someone who is, supposedly an anchor and journalist, as he is provided in his bio on CNN, here he is talking about that. Meanwhile, we are seeing in Portland a historic church be set aflame for the second time. And that's not being really covered at all. And these individuals who are promoting this, Joey, it's just a concern to me that they are using elements, and it's connected again to what we're seeing in this conference that's coming to the Vatican, and why is it's because they're utilizing certain key terms, certain key messaging to be able to promote an ideology, right? So, Joey, tell me a little bit about what you think with regards to the Portland riots, what we're hearing from Maxine Waters. What is the answer? Because a lot of times we're hearing from in the radio, and this is for you, Joey Manarino. We're hearing from the radio, we're hearing from the media, a lot of rhetoric, but not a lot of the answers. Like, what's the answer to this when we have such a high level of difficulty in the culture right now?
So it's not an answer that we're going to be able to achieve while we have a media that's hostile to anybody that disagrees with their ideology. You're not going to be able to achieve that answer when you have a president who is not interested in unity. You have a Democrat Party who's interested right now in, we have the majority for the first time since 2008, I think, where they have all forces of government. They're not interested in unity. They're not interested in getting along. Right now, they're interested in getting their agenda through. I mean, and I don't see anything that's going to say, no, we're not going to do what we're doing right now. They're going to keep dividing, and the media is going to keep covering. This is the problem. Chris Cuomo, like you said, he said that more white people need to get shot right on TV, on live television. And other than you and about maybe New York Post and I think maybe 2 other outlets, nobody even blinked an eye. This is just normal talk now. So the rhetoric keeps getting raised. We're not going to get unity anytime soon, and it's not going to end anytime soon. So you ask, what's the solution? The solution is, I think it's going to need to get you're going to need somebody who makes Donald Trump look like a little calm person who is just going to sit back and do nothing. Until that happens, it's just going to keep going worse and worse and worse. That's the way to think about it. And it's sad, but it's true.
Well, Joey Meugniot, what are you thinking? I mean, you've heard Joey Manarino talk about like pushing through specific legislation, pushing through their agendas, and the media being involved with that. We have seen that also with the Chinese, the CCP, involving themselves in our media. We've discussed this before in past policy, where they're utilizing keywords, key terms, whatnot, to push a rhetoric and agenda. This is a normal thing, I think, within the media manipulation. But Joey Meugniot, like, what are some of these legislation concerns? What are some of this rhetoric? What is it? Because we've been seeing a lot of active shooters, and we're going to bring up something that Dr. Fauci weighed in on CNN yesterday in a moment. But what are some of these like agendas that you think are being pushed right now that, some of these individuals are seeking to use this time of, Democrat legislation majority?
Well, so a few things that are going to get pushed through. The primary one being, I mean, you talked briefly about, mass shootings and active shooters, and the Second Amendment is going to be attacked from all sides, from every angle that they can possibly figure it out. And most Republicans or most conservatives or people that support the Second Amendment, and there are some Democrats that support the Second Amendment, Joe Manchin comes to mind, and a few others, but most of them are okay with it. And the line, the defense line that they come back with is, it's for self-defense. We need it for self-defense. Okay, but that's not really what the Second Amendment's about. And the reason why they're trying to get rid of the Second Amendment, because if they push through all the other radical neo-Marxist socialist agenda that they have going on, right? They want to pack the court. They want to redistribute wealth. They want to take a lot of money and put it into pet programs. They want open borders, all of these things, right? And if a populace is disarmed, history has told us that it is incredibly difficult to fight back against a tyrannical government. That's the reason why the Second Amendment is there in the first place. People have this thought process for some reason, and Republicans, conservatives roll it out all the time, that the Second Amendment is for self-defense. And the founding fathers of the United States did not have self-defense in mind. They didn't think, they didn't write it to protect yourselves from robbery and home invasion. That's not why they wrote it. That has nothing to do with it. They wrote it to protect you from a tyrannical government. The Second Amendment is there to protect you from government. It's there to keep the politicians and government in check should they start infringing on individual rights and individual liberties. They determined that, over 250 years ago, that individual rights were the key, the cornerstone of a civilized society, of a way to ensure that the people remained free and that they were able to govern themselves effectively. So they're going to come, and they've already done it. There's been executive actions about it. That there will be additional legislation on it. They're going to continue to legislate. They're going to continue to push the envelope as far as they can. When you look at red flag laws, they're going to continue to hammer home a lot of this agenda and continue to try to do it at the same time. Some of these other items as well. That's the game plan. It has been the game plan. They said it was the game plan, and now they're just executing on it, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. They will continue to push this inch by inch until they accomplish what they want to accomplish.
Joey, it's one of those things that I have found really interesting. Off camera, we've had some discussions on the Supreme Court because the courts, we have these three tiers of government. We've got the executive, you've got the legislation, and then you've got the Supreme Court, right? And one of the things that I find very interesting is that you expressed concern on something called packing of the courts, and in particular the Supreme Court, and a concern that you have, Joey Meugniot, of the president getting ready to do that. And this is one of the kind of concerns, again, the rhetoric that is being pushed around Washington, D.C. I'd like to hear you and Joey Mannarino kind of explain a little bit that for those of us who are just listening who may not have heard anything really in the news about this. What is your concern about, packing the Supreme Court?
Well, frankly, if they pack the court, if they pack the court, the Constitution is completely up for grabs. I mean, right now you've had 9. Okay, so every so often, sometimes it's more liberal, sometimes it's more conservative. Right now, it's a more conservative court, but for the last, I don't know how many years, but over 100 years, we've had 9 justices on the Supreme Court. And now that the Democrats feel that they've lost control of the court and they want to enact, like Joey was saying, the Second Amendment needs to go away. You need to make sure you can have all these basically socialist Marxist programs. Well, the Constitution doesn't allow that. So how do you get rid of the Constitution? You can't just put it through a shredder. You have to go through the process of the Supreme Court. So let's put 4, they want to put now 4 more justices on the court, all appointed by Biden. So you're going to have an imbalance, and it's going to be from a conservative court to a liberal court. Let's also be honest. They say that the Supreme Court right now is a 6-3 conservative court. That's a lie, because Roberts, who's appointed by a Republican, that man is completely a swing vote. You don't know which way he's going to go. Kavanaugh, Barrett, and Gorsuch have not been home runs for the conservative movement. These are all new Trump people, but they have not been home run conservatives by any stretch of the imagination. So when you talk about an imbalanced Supreme Court, we're still getting decisions that are not exactly conservative to this very moment. So they just want to make sure they can own the court. They want to, just like they own Joe Biden's presidency, they own the House right now, they own the Senate. They own all these people. They want to own the Supreme Court so that nothing stands in their way. The Supreme Court is the last line of defense. Once you get rid of that, the rest is up for grabs.
So, Joey Manorino, I hear what you're saying, but Joey Meugniot, there's got to be some defense to having such a precedence be set. I mean, is there anything because we're not here to be inflammatory on this program here. We're here to talk about the actual factual news, and this is something that is being discussed in Washington, D.C. Is there anything that the people can do at this point? Are we at a loss? Is this just something that's going to be a home run for President Biden? Joey Meugniot.
So there's a few things that are, with the Senate is still not, while the Democrats control the Senate, it's not a home run for them. There's still some roadblocks for them to hit. Not all Democratic senators think alike. Luckily, the Senate, there's still a few non-radicalized Democrats left in the Senate. So they'd have to pass it through the House and the Senate. So there's that. So, if you live in a state that has contact your contact your congressman, contact your senator. The Senate being the important part of that. Luckily, these measures aren't hugely popular with the American people. So while they might get out of the House, the protection was always there in the first place for things like this to get stopped in the Senate. So the Senate's really the backstop. That's why control of the Senate was so hugely important in the last election, and why it will probably be moving forward as well. So as they try to pack the courts, as they try to do some of these things, it doesn't look great for conservatives in the United States. It's looking pretty dim right now. But there is a little bit of hope that those things will change. And then, we're only it feels less than this, but we're only about a year-ish away from midterm elections. Elections have consequences. Elections matter. And regardless of what you think happened in the last election, if you don't vote, it doesn't really matter. People have to show up. Elections are won by those that vote and those that show up. So conservatives, Republicans have to show up. You have to show up in massive, insane numbers to be able to stop these things. If you don't agree with them, you have to vote. You have to be an active participant in the republic. If you're not, then there's not a lot that you're going to be able to do. You can complain about it all you want to, but if you don't show up and vote, and you don't contact your representatives, and you don't talk to people around you about these issues, no one's going to know, no one's going to vote, and down the republic shall go.
Right. And, one of the things that I find really interesting is going to kind of circle back, as we hear often now from the White House press officer, is that one of the things that I find really interesting is a movement within our legislation to really do a lot of activism on the ground, on the scene. Even if, like we were talking about earlier with Maxine Waters being in a district that isn't even hers, she's likely fundraising off of the words that she has said during the different demonstrations in the last 48 hours. And so, one of the things that Joey Manorino and I were talking about is understanding fundraising. Before we go on, because I definitely want to, circle back to, again, what Dr. Fauci has been saying, because he is also becoming very activist in certain areas that he doesn't really seem to have much of an experience in. But, fundraising, Joey Manorino, what exactly, why do legislators have to fundraise? Like when you see them going out and they're promoting something or whatnot, and they're like, please donate to us, whether you're Republican or Democrat, why do they fundraise?
Because
where does that money go?
They have to get elected. It goes straight into their campaigns. It's something that I know a lot of people don't like money in politics, but the fact of the matter is, Senate races, $5-6 million to run. You have House races, $1, $2, $3, up to $4 or $5 million to run. This money doesn't come from their pockets. This money comes from people. So when you donate to a political candidate, you're not paying their salary. You're not handing it to them. You're handing it to their campaign. They need staff. They need ground game. They need legal fees at this point. They need to be able to pay for legal fees, given how elections are run now. You need to sue to actually get a result a lot of the time. So when you donate to a politician, you're not just throwing money into some kind of weird, corrupt, oh, we're going to pay for their hair and makeup. No, you're actually paying for the apparatus of the campaign. So if you want people to get elected, especially those that are not incumbents, if you want to beat out somebody like a Waters or beat out somebody like, I don't know, whatever example you want to discuss, you need to give money to their opponent so that they can fight the incumbent. They're not just going to do that through social media. They're not just going to do that through some random way of, let's have a movement all organic. Organic movements don't exist anymore. You need advertising, you need money, and that's how it's come. That's how it's come now. They always want to change that. They always want to make different rules. They want to maybe publicly fund elections where you give every citizen $100 democracy dollars and they then donate it to the person. No, the way it works right now is you donate to the candidate you want, you go vote for them. If you're not in their district, you still donate. If you want to make change, it takes, sadly, it's a business. It takes money.
Right. And before we go to break, I know, Joey Meugniot, you actually helped fundraise for the Democrats. And I think that's something that people would find very interesting, just coming from your background. You were grassroots as well, but you also helped fund some pretty large campaigns. Before we go to break, and on the other side, we're going to talk about Dr. Fauci, and then we're going to talk about the use of social media and what we've seen, in the last two segments, whether it comes from the conferences to the aspect of the Maxine Waters being on social media, to all of these different elements. Why social media is so important nowadays, and why we need to hold accountable individuals who are on social media as well. But Joey, before we go to break, tell us a little bit about the machinations behind the scenes and fundraising and what you did.
So mostly grassroots fundraising back before I left the Democratic Party. So, talking to small donors, discussing, the issues that are important to them, and aligning those issues with the candidates and their policy positions and what they want to do. Right? Most money is still generated through grassroots small donor donations. Well, successful candidates anyway. There's always big donors and the PACs and the super PACs and all that other stuff. But most people are, like most campaigns, are still grassroots small donor funded. So that's really what it is. It's just aligning those two things together. So that's the key to most of it, is just making sure that the people understand the issues and how your policies align with their goals and their ideals.
Okay, so when we get back, we're going to talk about this other viral video that came out of CNN yesterday from Anthony Fauci. And we're going to talk a little bit more about social media and what to expect in the near future. And then I know that Joey has a few other ideas as well. And we're going to talk maybe a little bit about what's coming out of Germany and something that the Holy Father said just recently. But that will be back in just a moment. This is Intersections. Thank you very much.
Catholics claim that the Pope is the visible principle and foundation of Christian unity, and the reason for this claim is that Jesus made Peter as such. But what's our evidence? First, Jesus makes Peter the rock upon which he builds his church in Matthew 16:18. And since you can't separate the structure from the foundation on which the structure is built, it follows that wherever Peter is, there's the true church of Christ. Luke 22:31-32 is another text. Jesus singles Peter out and promises to protect him in faith and commands him to strengthen the brethren. Peter's job was to keep the apostles united in faith. And if the apostles wanted to benefit from Jesus' prayer of protection, they had to stick with Peter. We can benefit from this unity in faith as well. We stick with Peter's successor, the Pope. I'm Carlo Broussard with the ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Looking for a Catholic university where the greatest works of Western and Catholic tradition are the foundation for learning, all in an environment that is faithful to the magisterium? Recommended by the Cardinal Newman Society, the University of Dallas offers an exceptional liberal arts education, preserving the wisdom of the past while preparing students for world-changing futures. Academically excellent, always faithful. Apply today at udallas.edu.
Welcome back to Intersections. This is Bree, your host, with Joey Meugniot, my co-host, and Joey Manarino, who is a political consultant and an expert in strategic communications. We've been having a little bit of doggy difficulties for Joey Manarino, as his dog is a little cold, but I think he's settling down now. So thanks for picking him up, Joey Manarino. We were talking about on the last segment, we were talking about some media manipulation, also crisis manipulation, some of the examples of the use of media to push rhetoric. And we also were talking on the first section of the show today on this big conference that's going to be taking place through the in support of the Vatican with individuals like Anthony Fauci. So if our producer Adrian can, he's going to put up another viral video that CNN produced yesterday, asking Anthony Fauci on another situation, a pandemic that they are calling as well a crisis. And here we go with the video.
Before I let you go, I want to ask about another epidemic in the U.S., and that is gun violence. 8 people were shot and killed in a mass shooting in Indianapolis on Thursday night. The U.S. has reported 47 mass shootings in just over a month. You've worked in public health broadly for a long time. Is gun violence in the U.S. a public health emergency?
You know, myself as a public health person, I think you can't run away from that. I mean, when you see people getting killed, I mean, in this last month, it's just been horrifying what's happened. How can you say that's not a public health issue?
So now, Joey Meugniot and Joey Manarino, we are having the head of the NIH talking about a new crisis of health relations with regards to active shooters. And we've seen quite a few active shooters just recently. But here we have CNN coming out and asking Anthony Fauci, who is supposedly focusing on COVID, and for his opinion on this on live television. The same Anthony Fauci who is coming over to the Vatican to talk about culture and health in that way. Joey Meugniot, what are your thoughts when you see Anthony Fauci doing this press circuit and his opinions?
I'm not a huge, well, for various reasons, I'm not a huge fan of his political opinions when it comes to pretty much anything. You know, there are real health emergencies in the United States, like obesity. It's a pretty big one, and it is the largest comorbidity and biggest indicator of if coronavirus is going to affect you or not, and how hard will it impact you. Obesity is a big one, but we didn't talk about that. Let's talk about gun violence, because that's gonna change. That's gonna move the needle. So no, he doesn't need to be talking about this. He doesn't have a valid opinion. It's not a public health crisis. You know, if we're going to start talking about things that kill people on an everyday basis, we could call poverty and obesity and communism are bigger health crises than the one that he's trying to manufacture. And he's doing what he does best, which is mostly fear mongering and trying to drum up support for an idea.
You know, Joey Manarino, we are reading about some very concerning reports regarding certain after effects of the vaccines. And Anthony Fauci has come out and said, you know, we don't think that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, for example, is going to be on a permanent hold, which is currently in the United States. We saw new reports coming out of Oxford yesterday that they're going to be doing some testing on individuals who have already had the vaccine to see if there's going to need to be a booster. Anthony Fauci
I think we lost Bree there, Joey. So I think the next idea is just that
Yeah. I think we did lose Bree. So we're talking about the vaccines. We're talking about what's going on with them. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what's going on with a vaccine that was done in a few months. So we'll have to see what happens there. I mean, but as far as Fauci's concerned, stay in your lane. Just stay in your lane. You were brought out to talk about COVID-19. You're the director of the NIH. That has nothing to do with gun violence. That's just not where you need to be talking, Dr. Fauci. And this is something that he's had a habit of doing. He just puts his nose where the business doesn't, he just doesn't need to be there. So stay where you're needed. He knows about coronavirus, apparently. He knows about infectious disease. Let's listen to his opinion on that. He's got plenty of them. They change every couple of hours. So, he's got plenty of time to talk about that. We don't need his opinion on gun violence. We don't need his opinion on politics. It's just not necessary. Stay where you're needed.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with that. I think that there's a lot to be said for rolling him out and talking about all these other issues that is well outside of his purview. And I think you're going to continue to see it, even if he were ever to leave his particular role. We're never going to. Yeah, we're just going to keep seeing him, see him talk about all the other issues.
He's very popular. He has a 60 or 70% approval rating in the United States, they say. So whenever Biden can utilize that, he's one of the top surrogates. I mean, in reality, I'm surprised he hasn't decided to pick and run for a Senate seat or something, because he'd probably win. And then we'd have to hear him for the rest of eternity. But what can you do?
Let's hope not. That sounds like an awful premise. I mean, next he's going to be talking about, Second Amendment and foreign policy and all the other things that he knows very little about. And, exactly. I saw a really funny comment online, it said that if he's going to talk about the Second Amendment, then, if he was a big fan of double masking, so maybe we should be a fan of double carrying to prevent gun violence. So
maybe
there's an overwhelming tendency for the media to roll out these experts and talk about these things. So Bree, are you back?
I am back. Hopefully you guys can hear me. We've been having storms, and I think it knocked out my my internet access for a bit. But I think I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes. Sorry, I had muted myself again.
Perfect.
You're good to go. Welcome.
Okay.
Welcome back.
So, thank you. The host is back. So, I was catching what you were saying, weighing in, like, this is one of the areas where I start to get really frustrated as a journalist, is because we had this viral video that came out with Chris Cuomo weighing in on something that he's not an expert in. We've got Anthony Fauci now weighing in on the Second Amendment. Now, there is mental health issues that we have to address, right? But is it really the job of the government, or is it the job of MDs? And how long has Anthony Fauci been, in the public sphere of policy and not been clinical? And is that his clinical expertise speaking? Is he a clinical psychologist where he can talk about this as an epidemic? These questions, I think, have to be answered. And I think in what I have seen on social media, and we're talking about social media in a second. One of the things that I find really interesting is that within social media, we do see individuals holding people accountable. Where is your cooperation? We see a lot of trolls too, but Joey Manarino, you are an expert in strategic communications. Your company deals with social media. What are your thoughts when we see things like this, like the Cuomo video or the Maxine Waters video or the Anthony Fauci video? What are your thoughts with regards to our legislators and those people who are standing on on these making decisions, legal decisions? How do you hold them accountable? And should people be jumping on social media, creating accounts in order to hold people accountable? Is that the fastest way?
So it's a fast way, but at the same time, you got to understand, most of these politicians, they don't read their social media. They don't do their social media. Their staff will alert them that there's a problem. But I'll tell you, it's so many people that just troll these politicians. They're not trying to make change. They're not trying to affect actual legislation. They just want to insult. I mean, we have some of the largest names in the country that are on our company, and we read the comments, and I'll tell you, if they're trying to advocate for a certain policy position, I can't see it, because all I see is a bunch of insults to these people that make no sense. Social media was meant to affect change. You were meant to dialogue, but there has been a lot of censorship of one side of the particular aisle. So it kind of is an imbalance. You'll look at the comments on a certain, politician's post, and it'll just be nothing but insults and parody accounts and, oh, your husband this and your wife that. And it's like, what are we talking about here? Why are you not talking about, I disagree with you on this vote because? No, it's not a serious medium in that sense. Now, can you make change? Can you make hashtags trend? Can you make things come to the top? Yes. If all we had was the traditional media, I can promise you that we would never have seen the Maxine Waters video from yesterday. I can promise you we would never know about it at all. Social media kept that story alive. But at the same time, is social media a cure-all for discourse? No, I think it is horrible for discourse. I think it has destroyed political discourse, and I should say that very lightly because it's how I make my living. But it has absolutely killed discourse in the United States of America, politically and otherwise. It's a disaster.
Well, we're coming to the end of this this show, and we're so pleased to have had an expert like yourself who has really thrived in this very, very incendiary industry on with us. Thank you so much, Joey Manorino. And for those of you who are listening, this is thank you for coming on and braving the weather and with your puppy. This is Intersections, and we are really blessed and grateful for you to listen to us today. Please join us next Monday. Put your comments in our comment boxes. Share this out. We're still trying to get out there, people, and we're on social media because we are looking to affect change, but in a way that's civil. And we want to promote civil dialogue, discourse, debate, and we hope to have you on very, very soon. But Joey, thank you for being on today, and Joey Manorino and Joey Meugniot, thank you very much, and thank you for listening to us. This is Intersections. I'm your host, Bree Dail, and God bless until next time.